Moisture is the #1 enemy of buildings. In warm climates, it shortens surface life expectancy through erosion and sets up conditions for mold, algae, and lichen growth. In cold climates, moisture also freezes in surfaces, leading to expansion, contraction, and ultimately failure. X4 is a professional-grade water-repellent sealant for both interior and exterior building materials, including brick, stone, mortar, aggregate, stucco, concrete, composite materials, and even grout. Additionally, X4 resists acids, alkalis, salts, and even graffiti, and it can even be mixed with paint to make surfaces washable. Use is simple. Just apply X4 to most surfaces, allow it to dry, and enjoy year-round maintenance-free protection. To ensure best performance over time, a simple test can be used to measure moisture resistance and guarantee maximum performance. X4 is available as single gallons, 4x1 gallon cases, and 5-gallon pails. Prepare for winter and purchase X4 today at EnviroGuardDirect.com. And if you have questions, get factory direct support by calling 828-548-3900. Am I on? All right. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us for our second Back to the Basics. And this morning we're going to be talking about probably a very known topic, but maybe a service that while it should be a part of your stable of services, it's not yet. And so what we want to do is put a spotlight on it and focus on why it should be and what it does to benefit your customers and how it might help you expand business overall with everything from property managers and real estate agents to just your general commercial and residential business. So what I'm talking about today is the erosion, the freeze-thaw damage, and all the exterior damage that comes along with the environment, right? So moisture damage, things of that nature. Of course, moisture is one of the hardest wearing issues when it comes to exteriors. And so we're going to address that today and go through this not only from the standpoint of information, but we've got a second camera going on, and we're going to do a little bit of show and tell while we're here as well. So sit back, take it in. This is recording, so you can go back and listen to it later on. And then any questions that you have at the end of this, we'll be happy to take those questions. Let me also kind of set the table. I want to talk to you about the problem and solution first. When we're finished talking about that, we're going to go over to a wall that we constructed, and we're going to talk about the use of the product, everything from safety on through equipment, product, things of that nature. And then the third portion, we're going to get into cost and estimating. And I think this is going to help you get your arms around how this could be a part of your business, what it would mean for this service to be a part of your business. And then we're going to talk about the support things. I guess there's like really 4 elements to today. And when we talk about products going forward, we're going to make sure that we focus on those 4 elements so that you feel really confident in maybe starting up a new service. All right. So to begin with, and there's going to be slides in here so you can kind of follow along with us. Let's talk about the 3 use cases when it comes to this. And this is going to be proposed in the form of what is the problem? What's going on with the outside environment and its impact on the building, right? Okay, so the first thing that we want to talk about is freeze-thaw damage. So winter's coming. And whenever you have a semi-porous surface, whether that is brick and mortar, stone and mortar, ephes, stucco, aggregate materials, things like that, anytime you have any of those materials, that's a semi-porous surface, meaning that moisture can get into it. And this would even include like parged foundations, block foundations, poured foundations. All of those different materials have the same problem, and that is that they will absorb water. Right? And when it does, and if you're in a colder climate zone like we are here, then that moisture that's been absorbed, it expands when it freezes, and then when it contracts, right, then it relaxes again, right? And then it freezes, right, at night, and then the sun shines on that surface, and it thaws during the day, relaxes again. And the repeated bouts of that happening, as you can probably see from our video or videos over the last week or so, is what leads to everything from pitting to those mortar joints giving way and cracking and breaking, and it becomes a very expensive thing to maintain over time. And again, that applies to all of those materials. So freeze thaw damage is one problem that we're running up on right now. And add to that things like salt in the wintertime, right? And you've expanded that problem exponentially because acids, alkalis, and salts will wear away at those surfaces as well. And it's all happening together over wintertime. That's why properties have so much damage just a few months later when spring comes. Okay, so freeze thaw damage is one problem that we need to solve. The other problem is wind-driven rain. So maybe you're not a cold climate. Maybe you're in a warm climate like Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Southern California, but you have wind-driven rain and it's driving into the side of buildings regularly. That is increasing moisture content in all of these surfaces, and that's wearing at the cladding materials on the outsides of buildings that we have already named: EIFS, stucco, brick and mortar, stone and mortar, aggregates, on and on and on. Okay, so when that wind is hitting those surfaces, it's wearing away at those surfaces, even painted surfaces, by the way. And we have a solution for that as well. Now, the third thing is related to the second, and that is the erosion of cement-based surfaces and mortar joints. So you've got the surface, which is your stone, your brick, your EIFS, etc. But then you've got those joints or those cement-based materials that are going to absorb moisture as well. And then that shows up in areas where you have high humidity climates as well. So, and there's a lot of crossover between these things, right? Here in North Carolina, we get, in a lot of areas, we get a winter. So we have, issues with freeze thaw damage. We've got wind driven rain, certainly, because we get a lot of those, tropical storms and things that come up the coast or come out of, the Gulf and that sort of thing. And then we have water erosion of those surfaces as a result. So we've kind of got the trifecta here, but wherever you are, probably two of these elements are impacting buildings in your area, which is why you should be offering a service to stop these problems. Okay. So then along with the three use cases, we also have three services that you've got to think about, because there's the possibility that there has been an ongoing problem, but your customer may not have the budget to deal with fixing it entirely, but they don't want it to get worse. So the first service that you could offer is a stabilization service. That is treating the surface, even if it's eroded, even if it's deteriorated, but preventing it from becoming a bigger problem, okay? So that's one way to deal with it. Now, ideally, you would, if you were at the beginning of maybe new construction or the surface hadn't worn yet, then you would be dealing just with a sealing service. They're the same, right? The same moving parts in each of those. Just you're trying to accomplish two different things. Stabilization prevents it from getting worse, but just a sealing service is going to prevent it from occurring at all, okay, in the first place. So we're getting ahead of it. And then the third possibility is that you have a restoration and sealing service, right? This is when maybe there's a combination of cleaning, right, before sealing. It may require repointing before sealing. And hopefully you've got, contractors who you do business with who, if you don't do a repointing service, they do, and it can be an overall restoration and sealing service as a result. So stabilization, sealing, and restore and seal are the three different services that you want to be thinking about when it comes to dealing with stopping the erosion and the freeze thaw damage and everything that we've already talked about to this point. Now, I'm going to be consulting my notes along the way because I don't want to get off track with you guys. But the third area that we want to talk about is the simplicity of this service. Now, with other services, let's take, for example, mold remediation. It may be a higher skill service that you don't get a lot of, the customer doesn't get a lot of reward from, right? Because all that you're doing is returning that property to a pre-loss condition. And so it's not like putting a new kitchen in or something like that where you can see this, oh, look at that, right? I put, $20,000 into that. unfortunately, with a mold remediation service, it's a high skill service, right? It is a service that gets no reward. You're just bringing it back to pre-loss condition, and it's expensive. Well, when we're dealing with this, right, this sealing service, we're doing a low skill. I'm going to show you that in a second here. A low skill type of service that is high profit and it's affordable for your customer. Okay, now affordable, is a scale, but versus having to deal with exterior deterioration of walkways, driveways, sides of buildings, exterior walls, all of these sorts of things, chimneys, all of those different services, and have to redo those over a period of years. Now we're going to help the customer maintain those. So relative to the cost of replacement, this is a very affordable service. All right. I think there's one last part to this. No, I got to go to camera 2. Okay. So I'll join you over there at camera 2. Let me know when I'm on. Okay, so I'm on. Hopefully you can see me okay. This is our first time doing this from camera 2, but as you can see, what we've set up here is a block wall in our shop for you to be able to take a look at what I'm doing and why we're talking through this. And the first thing I want to bring your attention to is the inspection process. Your best friend in inspecting a surface for its ability to absorb moisture is what's called the Rylom tube. If you've known me for a little while, you've probably heard me talking about the Rylom tube. But what it is it's a column of water, and what you have is 5 mils of water that we're going to add to this column. And as you can see, what we do with a little plumber's putty is we affix it to the surface, and that's going to tell us how much moisture that surface is absorbing right now, right, as a semi-porous surface. So everything that I've listed up to this point, the ephes, the stuccos, the brick and mortar, the stone and mortars, the aggregates and everything else can all be tested the same way with this very simple Rylom tube system. And the nice thing is that not only can we do a pre-test, but then after the surface has had the ability to cure for at least 72 hours, we can do a post-test, and then this can become a regular part of your services for profit that you test for periodically, so that you can maintain that level of protection of surfaces as well. Okay, so the Rylom tube is your inspection vehicle. Now let's talk a little bit about safety. From a safety standpoint, it's really very simple. What we recommend is, when dealing with any chemicals, even though these are benign chemicals, quite frankly, use nitrile gloves. Okay, these are our new 9 mil nitrile gloves, by the way. The benefit to a 9 mil is that consider these an all-day glove. A lot of people are using like 4 mil gloves, and you rip those very quickly, right? But these will last someone all day. One step up from that, you can see those blue gloves in behind me there. Those are a 15 mil glove. Those are reusable for multiple days. But these are great, and they come a lot further up your arm. But let me get away from that for a second. Nitrile gloves are the way to go. The other thing that you probably are going to want is a goggle, just to prevent any sort of splash and that sort of thing. We love these UVEX goggles, and the reason that we do is that you get a seal right around your eye, so it does protect the mucous membranes of the eye as well, okay? So rather than just being a splash guard or a glass, a pair of glasses, these give you protection all the way around, all right? So those are the 2 recommendations there. And then, of course, from a respiratory standpoint, no respiratory equipment is needed at all. So let me place these here. All right. So now that we've talked a little bit about safety, let's talk about equipment. Your best friend when working with a sealing service, I always not confused, but I will say service instead of surface and vice versa. But when dealing with a sealing service, you will want either a pump sprayer or you'll want an electric sprayer, like the BTM is a perfect example. So if you already have a BTM sprayer, that can do your cleaning and your sealing all in one piece of equipment, versus over here with a pump sprayer, you would want two of those, right? One for the cleaning side and then one for the sealing side of things. Properly marked, I would say, right? Have an ID label on there, an X4 ID label, for example, on the sealing side. And if you're using something like, let's say it's Oxypar DC to clean those exteriors, then have an ID label on it so you don't get confused between the two products. One of the characteristics, let me just put this down here a second, that you want to look for in your sprayer is that you've got replaceable or adjustable tips. All right. So right now I have a 0.2 gallon per minute tip in here. And with these tips, in our case, I can go right from a 0.2, okay? And if I wanted to, and let's say I wanted to do misting instead of actual application, I'm going to show you the difference on the surface and how this is going to look in service for you. So I'm just going to switch that out, put the washer back on here. All these washers are Viton. And now I'm going to go ahead and affix a 0.1 gallon per minute tip to this. All right. I'm kind of sitting close in here, so I might spray myself. But what we're going to do, and hopefully you can see this okay, is when you're doing a sealing service, you want to start from the bottom and you want to work your way up. Now, if I had actual X4 in here, it would be milky white. What I've got here right now is water, because this is meant for multiple trainings and certification next year on different types of moisture control related services. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the very bottom and I'm going to wet that surface out. And as I see that moisture begin to work its way and push back, which means I'm applying to the point of runoff, when I see that moisture push back and we get complete saturation, I'm going to work my way up. Now, that is with a 0.1 gallon per minute tip. And that's a nice misting tip. It gives you a lot of control. But if you want to work more quickly, you might want a spraying tip in here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch that out for a 0.2. It's only 0.2 gallons per minute, right? The other one was 0.1 gallons per minute. This one's 0.2 gallons per minute, but you're going to see a visual difference in how quickly I can go from where I was before now to this tip, okay? And immediately it's, it is saturating and then reaching that point of runoff very quickly, okay? So there we go. So a 0.2, a lot of times in this service is going to be your best friend, whether it is with an electric sprayer or whether it be with a pump-up sprayer. Just make sure you've got that adjustability, because if we were dealing with a bridge, an overpass, a subway system, right, wherever you might want to apply this service, then you may find that some of those surfaces are a lot more dense. And in that case, you're going to hit that point of saturation much more rapidly. And so a 0.1 gallon per minute tip might be your best friend in that case. But here, we're dealing with block construction. This is about as porous as you can get. And in this case, a 0.2 tip is just about perfect. You could probably even bounce up to a 0.3 tip and be just fine. All right. So now that we've talked about equipment, let's talk about installation. So as you can see, flooding the surface is the way to go, right? And what you don't want to do is you don't want to start, I'm just going to kind of move over here. You don't want to start from the top and work your way down, because then you never know quite where your saturation point is, okay? Working from the top up, just like this, you always see that saturation point. And what you want is that trail of the product coming down about 6 to 8 inches behind the movement of your tip, okay? So that's really going to help you make sure that you've applied enough product to the surface to get complete penetration, and you will never see that if you work from the top down or from side to side. Now, occasionally, we were doing some work outside yesterday. Occasionally, you're going to work on like a pitted wall, like a pitted concrete wall. And it might be that stabilization sort of surface that we were talking about before, where everything doesn't quite fit into the budget, but you don't want it to get worse. Well, when you have a lot of pitting, you might do an initial application from the bottom up, and as you're looking at that, you're going, there are some areas in here where I am going to need to go side to side as a second wet on wet application. Be cognizant of that when you're doing your initial assessment for areas where you have a lot of undulation in the surface pitting, things of that nature. And keep in mind that your use rate is going to be according to that type of undulation or pitting. I would recommend that you test surfaces in your assessment before you give an estimate, so you know approximately how far your product is going to go, so you estimate right. When we get over, back over to the estimating section, I'm going to come back over to my screen and everything over here. We're going to walk through each of these different surfaces, and we're going to talk about the cost variabilities between those, and how we've plugged in estimating and pricing to that. And I'll explain all that in a second. Okay. So we talked about flooding the surface, coverage rates based on surface porosity. Let me just stay on track with you here. Cleanup. Great thing about cleanup with this is all it takes is water. But you want to make sure that any leftover product you spray directly back into the container. So if this is my container here, all that I'm going to do is at the very end, I'm going to probably, by the way, I'm going to remove my tip because that's just going to make it take longer. And then I'm just going to go directly back into your 1 gallon container, your 5 gallon container, whatever it might be, until you've got an empty spray. At that point in time, then you're going to just simply, let me just do it for you. You're simply going to open up your sprayer, okay, and fill it with water, rinse it through your line, fill it again, dump it out of here. Make sure that your line and the basin itself, or the container itself, are clean, and then you're going to store it. Okay, so that's all that's required. And I think I'm ready to move back to the desk and go into some of the details of making this service your service. I'll be right with you. My throat was getting dry over there. Okay, so let's go back and talk about cost and estimate. All right, so we've plugged in some basic numbers here for your thoughts, and we've done this as a time and materials estimate, okay? So from a time standpoint, a lot of professionals in the industry, we see a hourly charge of $120 per hour. When we work with pest control companies and things like that, that's pretty much where people are. In your area, it might be a little less. In your area, it might be a little bit more. But the labor charge that we're going to figure all this off of is $120 an hour. The second thing that we want to throw in here as a cost, okay, is $70 per gallon. Now, what we wanted to do with that was include, any kind of shipping maximally. Like, what's the worst case scenario that X4 is going to cost you? The number is $70 per gallon. Okay, so let's start with that, and then we'll work our way through the different types of surfaces and coverage rates and things of that nature in our next slide. All right, so the different types of surfaces, and there are more than this, but this will give us a good starting idea, is a smooth precast concrete, a porous concrete, brick, stone, or bridge decking, right? Decorative block and stucco, steel trowel concrete, a split face block or a fluted block, and then a concrete block. All right, so those are the surfaces we're going to be looking at. So let's look at the coverage rates because they do vary. So on your smooth precast concrete, you're going to get about 125 to 175 square feet per gallon. On a porous concrete, brick, stone, or bridge decking, which could be overpasses, underpasses, subways, all these types of areas, think of all those things as being the same, 100 to 150 feet per gallon. decorative block and stucco, 50 to 150 feet per gallon. This is why we like to test in advance, right? If you do a test on even like a quart of product, you can tell from that how far this is going to go on that surface during assessment. Steel trowel concrete, 150 to 200 feet per gallon. Split face block and fluted block, 25 to 75 feet per gallon. It's the most porous. And then concrete block, 75 to 125 feet per gallon. So now let's look at the next stage. Your cost per foot. This is your cost per foot off of that $70 worst case scenario gallon price. You're looking at 40 cents to 56 cents per square foot on smooth precast, 47 cents to 70 cents on porous concrete, brick, stone, bridge decks, things like that. On decorative block and stucco, 47 cents to $1.40. Big difference there. Steel trowel concrete, 35 cents to 47 cents. Split face block and fluted block, 93 cents to 280, right? Because you're only getting 25 to 75 square feet out of a gallon. And then concrete block, 40 cents to 93 cents. Now, let's look at this from the standpoint if you had a 70% gross margin on this, what you would be charging the customer. Okay, and then we're going to give you an example. So on the smooth precast concrete, right, $1.33 to $1.86 per square foot. On your porous concrete, brick, stone, and bridge decks, $1.56 to $2.33 a square foot. On your decorative block and stucco, $1.56 to $4.67. On your steel trowel concrete, $1.17 to $1.56. On your split face block, $3.10 to $9.33. A big jump right there. Fortunately, there's not a lot of this out there, but if there is, you got to know what it's going to take and where you should be estimate-wise to make the margin you're looking to make. By the way, the way that I got to all of these numbers is I simply took that cost per square foot, I divided it by 0.3, right, which is what gave me a 70% margin in this, which is what's giving us our numbers here. And then a concrete block would be $1.33 to $3.10 per square foot as your charge. Let's go to the next slide. So let's look at an example of this. This is a 2,500 square foot home. Let's imagine this. I think we did this as a brick home, right? So outside that home, you're going to have somewhere between 2,400 and 2,800 total square feet of exterior coverage. That's thinking of from the ground up to your gutter of being about 12 feet in height, okay? So that's what we base this upon. Let's look at the next point. Time, a half a day, right? To set up, to apply the product with a two-man team, and then to clean up about a half a day. So figuring that $120 per hour into this scenario, we're at $480 for a labor charge. And then let's look at the material charge. We went to the very height, right? The worst case scenario again. And if you had a glazed brick or something like this, it would be less. If you had a porous brick, this is what it would be. At $2.33 per foot, your material charge is going to be $6,058 for a total charge to the customer of $65.38. Now that does exclude anything ancillary, such as maybe a little bit of PPE, some consumables, wearable materials, things like that. You know, switching out tips and figuring all of those costs over time into your bottom line. But again, this is going to give you at least a 70% margin overall in this job. Could you do less? Could you do more? Of course you could, but we wanted to give you an example of a good, profitable job for this service. What's our last slide here? Oh, let's talk about marketing and sales support. So with Grace at the helm of our marketing, we are going to be providing marketing and sales support. And some of the areas that we want to provide that to would include email content and imagery so that you can build emails out to your customers, web content, including the imagery and the text associated with it, a product recipe card. This is for your guys in the field so that if they want to look at something physical, or if they want to hit a QR code and go right to exactly what they need to be thinking about to execute the job in just a few steps, we're going to have a recipe card for this. an education sheet. This is what information that you would share with your customers. So after you've gone through the first 4 steps of the assessment and get back together to educate them, this is where you're going to bring out this sheet. Now the question here is, do you need or want a presentation that takes them through the same information that's on the sheet to go along with that? Because you could use this education sheet not only for like a one-on-one sitting down at a kitchen table sort of thing with a residential customer, but if you were presenting to a group of real estate agents, property managers, builders, whatever it might be nice to have a presentation. Let us know about that at support@enviroguarddirect.com, by the way, and we'll put that up for you to remember. We're also thinking about caption static social media ads so that you would have something to put to boost behind, so that is driving leads back to your website or wherever you want to drive those to. And then a short, we said co-branded, but really just a promotional video, right? Right now, because we want to be able to service as many people as possible, we're going to skip the co-branding for right now. We're going to come back to that with a certified service from our company to yours. So for right now, just think of it as being a promotional video so that you can put something on your website, your YouTube channel, et cetera, and have something to direct people to for education. So get in touch with us if this interests you, whether it's the service, whether it is, you might be an X4 user right now and you go, man, finally EnviroGuard is going to be offering, this marketing and sales support that we need. Reach out to us at support@enviroguarddirect.com and let us know that you want to work with us in getting all of these materials set up to launch, relaunch, improve this service in your business, or these services, right? Because we're talking about stabilization, we're talking about a restoration and sealing service, or just a sealing service on its own. So all 3 of those sorts of things. I think that's it for today, right? So thank you for being here. This was a short one, or a shorter one than last week. If you have any questions, reach out to us. We're happy to answer the questions that you have anytime. And if you need more detail behind this, we'll work with you one-on-one to make sure that you get it. Okay? Have a great weekend, everybody. We will not be talking to you next week, because next week we will be on Thanksgiving break. But the week after that, we will be talking about odor sealing services with the Vapor Lock products and all the different areas that you can get into there from the standpoint of odor sealing, and why you should be using a water-based vinyl product and not some of the other products that don't work on the market in the marketplace. So we look forward to talking to you, not next Friday, but the week after. But in the meantime, get in touch with us about these exterior sealing services, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Thanks.